Lesson 118, sine, cosine, and tangent. So this lesson gets into a little bit of trigonometry, working with sine, cosine, and tangent. Sine, you can see listed here, sine and cosine and tangent, how we find it. Let's look at that more in detail. So you have 6 trigonometric ratios that we will be using in trigonometry. We got sine, which is opposite over hypotenuse. So sometimes you might hear it as SOHCAHTOA to help you remember how to write the ratios. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite leg divided by the hypotenuse. And it might help if we know which part is the hypotenuse, which is the opposite and adjacent. So if we're trying to find a specific angle, let's just say this one is angle A. Opposite angle A is directly opposite it. So the leg that's opposite. So find that angle, go the opposite side. That's the opposite. Adjacent is always touching the angle, but it's not the hypotenuse. So it's always, the adjacent is always the leg that touches the angle. The hypotenuse is always opposite the right angle. Okay, so just remember that when you do opposite over hypotenuse or adjacent over hypotenuse. So sine, so opposite over hypotenuse. Ca is cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. And then toa, tangent, which is opposite over adjacent. And then you have 3 other ones. We're not going to look at today, but just for future reference, here's cosecant, which is the reverse of sine. So instead of opposite over hypotenuse, it would be the reciprocal of sine, which would be hypotenuse over opposites. Secant is the opposite of cosine, so this would be hypotenuse over adjacent. And then cotangent here would be the opposite of tangent, so it would be adjacent over opposite. But the ones that we want to look at for today are just sine, cosine, and tangent. A couple of examples here. Find the sine, cosine, and tangent of angle A. So angle A is right here. So sine, remember, this is so opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite is 6. Hypotenuse is 10. And we should always reduce it. So divide this by 2 halves and we get 3/5. Cosine. Cosine of A is adjacent, which is 8, over hypotenuse, which is 10. Again, simplify it, so divide by 2 halves, and that's 4/5. And then we have tangent of A. Tangent is opposite, so 6 over adjacent, which is 8. Reduce this by 2 halves, and we get 3/4. So those would be the ratios of sine, cosine, tangent of that triangle. Next one, find the sine, cosine, tangent of angle R. Angle R is here. So sine, this is SOHCAHTOA. So sine of R, opposite over the hypotenuse. And you notice we don't have any dimensions on our triangle. But remember, this is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. In a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the leg opposite the 30 is 1. The other leg is the square root of 3. And the hypotenuse is always twice the shortest leg. So that would be 2. Now if we write our ratios, opposite, which is 1, over hypotenuse is 2. Cosine of R the adjacent, square root of 3, divided by the hypotenuse, which is 2. And then the tangent of r is opposite 1 over adjacent, which is the square root of 3. Now for all of these, both in example 1 and example 2, we should put them as decimals. If they're asking for ratios, then we would leave it as we have here. But because they're just saying find the sine, cosine, and tangent of it, we should actually put them as decimals. So 3/5 would be 0.6. 4/5 would be 0.8. 3/4 would be 0.75. Sine of r, it's half, that's 0.5. Then the cosine of r, we'd have to do the square root of 3. Then divide that by 2. And we'll go 3 decimal places, so 0.866. And then 1 divided by the square root of 3 would give us, again, I'll do 3 decimal places, 0.577. So when it comes to rounding to the nearest thousandth place or 3 decimal places, see all the other ones, those are exact decimals, so that's why we didn't go any further than 1 or 2 digits. Example 3 and 4, find the sine and cosine of angle A. So if angle A is here, we need to find the sine and cosine of that angle. So we will need to use our calculator here to solve this one. I will grab my calculator. So I'll have to hit sine and then the degree, which they gave me 35, then hit enter. I gotta make sure in my mode, you can see I'm in radians. I need to make sure I'm in degrees. So now if I do sine 35, I get 0.5735, so 3 decimal places, it would be 0.574. And then the cosine of 35, I would hit cosine and 35, and you get 0.819, 0.819. So to remember, you'll have to use your calculator for this one that has the trig functions on it. Next one, find sine, cosine, tangent of angle B by writing the ratio as a fraction. So here you have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So again, we need to use put the correct side lengths on it. So the shortest leg is always 1. The longest leg is square root of 3, and the hypotenuse is 2. So now find the sine of angle. This should be sine of angle B. So these should be B here. So sine of angle B, opposite, square root of 3 over hypotenuse, which is 2. Cosine of B, adjacent, over hypotenuse. And tangent, the opposite, square root of 3 over adjacent, which is 1. Those would be our ratios. Practice problems A and B. Find each solution round to the nearest thousandth. That means 3 decimal places. So sine of angle A. So I'll grab my calculator again. Do sine Angle A right here is 40. And 3 decimal places, so 0.643, so 0.643. Then tangent of angle B, I hit the tangent button, and then 33. Get 0.649, so 0.649. Now it says name the trig function for each ratio. Opposite over adjacent, that would be tangent. So think of TOA, opposite over adjacent. Opposite over hypotenuse, so it has to have O in it, which would have been so sine. And adjacent, it has to have AH, which is cosine. And our last problem, the height of a kite is the side opposite the 42-degree angle. The known side, 100 feet, is the side adjacent. Find the height of the kite. So we need to find this piece right here. So to solve this one, we know that we have an angle of 42 degrees. And we know we're trying to find the opposites, but we know the adjacent leg. So which one has opposite over adjacent? That would be the tangent. So if that is the tangent, we can take the tangent of 42, get x by itself, I multiply by 100. And when we do that, I'll grab my calculator so you can see that. Tangent 42 times 100. You get 90.04. And we can round that to the nearest foot. And so this would be about 90 feet. So that is our lesson today on sine, cosine, and tangent.